We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use the box at sign up for 10 points. And here we go.
Hey everybody, happy Friday night. Hopefully everybody's excited to be here. As always, I'm very fired up to be on here, joined by Noah as always. Noah, how are you, man?
I'm all right, man. I'm here. Technical difficulties tried to get in the way, but I'm here, and that's all that matters. So,
yeah, most definitely. Really excited for tonight's show. There's a lot to talk about. A lot of excitement here in the past week in sports all over, not just football. Joined by David already. Yo, yo, yo. Hey, Dave, glad to have you here. Real quick before I jump into things, I want to take some time to point out the shirt that I got on tonight. If you guys can't quite read what it says, it is a Trask for Heisman hype shirt from Barstool Sports. Really excited, just came in today. But yeah, no, let's jump right into it. Before we go ahead and kick it off with some football, there were a few things that I wanted to talk about here. One being, and if you guys didn't know, I am a huge Washington Wizards fan, just like my good friend Mike Bradley. And I know all you guys have probably seen this. Russell Westbrook going to the Wizards, John Wall going to the Rockets, where they have a very upset James Harden, who's still trying to get out of there. Very doubtful he stays. He's basically saying, trade me anywhere that's a contender, has any shot at winning. I don't want to be here anymore. What were your thoughts on that, Noah, when you saw that?
well, I think it makes sense. I like both Westbrook and Harden, but I never thought that they would work together because I think they're two very similar players. I think they're, and no disrespect to them, because a lot of players, they're effective doing this, but I think they're very individual players. They're great superstars by themselves. I'm not sure that they really make guys around them better. And, I saw that about James Harden today. I saw him saying he wants to go to the Heat, which would be a very interesting move. But, yeah, Russell Westbrook going to the Wizards, I think it's a good move. I'm a big fan of Westbrook. He has a lot of criticism around him. I get it. I understand it. But I also think he's an incredible talent. And this is a guy that, he averaged a triple-double in a season, and then he did it again. He's on pace to destroy the triple-double record. And the fact that they traded John Wall for Russell Westbrook when John Wall hasn't even been healthy for the past 3 years, obviously I don't think it's going to win him a title or anything, just getting one player, but I do think that was a very good individual trade because I think Westbrook's a very good player, and John Wall has been injured for so long that, what is he right now?
Yeah, and I will add that we did also give up a first-round pick. Really, that was the only negative I got out of the trade. Don't get me wrong, I love John Wall. But like you just said, Noah, he has been very injury-prone lately, dealing with some more serious injuries. We don't really know where he's at right now. Is he going to be the John Wall of old that, is going out there and making all of these really athletic, spectacular, spinning layups and, the stuff that got him well-known in the NBA with the Wizards? We don't know. It's really tough to come back from injuries. We've seen it time and time again where athletes just aren't quite the same after it, like guys like Derrick Rose, who, don't get me wrong, has had his stellar performances, but, definitely is nowhere near the same Derrick Rose that he was, with Chicago before that knee injury. We got some comments coming in here. Darren, glad to have you in here again. Nice game. Got that off the free shipping site, huh? I don't really know exactly what you mean by but I actually got this off of Barstool Sports, which is already sold out. I'm going to try and get and who's a Gators fan as well, one for Christmas, but no luck there. And Henry asking, does that mean the Washington Wizards could be a playoff team again finally?
I think so because the East is, it's up for grabs. You look at a team like the Wizards. I think even, my Atlanta Hawks could make a run because I think they made a lot of good moves. The East, I think, is very up for grabs right now. And the fact they added a player like like Russell Westbrook, when John Wall is I choked on some water, man. I'm sorry. But, yeah, like you mentioned, I like John Wall too, but he's just been injured for so long. And, that first-round pick you mentioned, I believe it's 2023, so I don't think they're going to be too concerned about that. The fact they added Russell Westbrook to that team is a very good talent. Bradley Beal's still there. I think that's looking like a definite playoff team, in my opinion.
Yeah, and actually, I saw some things coming out of the Wizards organization this week that they really feel like they can be that sixth seed in the East. Obviously, you got some contenders up there at the top. What are we going to see out of the Heat after that Finals appearance? And obviously, you got the Bucks with Giannis. You got the Celtics who of the past 2 seasons. And even the 76ers. So there's definitely some competition. 3 or 4 teams that are for sure in that 1 through 4 spot. But I think that fifth and sixth seed, is really wide open in the East. You said, no, I do expect your Hawks to compete for one of those seeds. And, other than them, the only team that really jumps out at me right now is this Wizards team with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Role players and some young guys starting to develop. I'm really hoping that we still add a big guy. Like I've been saying to Mike, the fellow Wizards fan, we really need a dominant 4 or 5. We just don't have somebody who can get tons of rebounds and score down the paint and help us that inside out game. So hopefully we can add somebody else there.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned with the East, there's 4 teams that I think are very, very good and probably above all the rest. And then other than that, it's just kind of a fight for the last, playoff spots. I think both our teams are very up and coming with a lot of young players. The Hawks, I had high hopes for them last year because they started off really well, and then unfortunately it just fell apart. I don't really like our coach either. I don't think he's very fit for the job, but hopefully we made the right moves to, move up the ranks. I certainly don't expect us to win a title or anything, but I think we can definitely make the playoffs because we got a lot of talent on the roster. Obviously, Trae Young. I was skeptical on him when we drafted him, but after how I saw him carry this team last season, I'm convinced that he's definitely a dude to be reckoned with. So it's going to be a very exciting NBA season. And, let's just get these sports back because it's been a very difficult year all around, sports-wise as well. And I'm just excited to see him coming back.
Yeah, and a guy you mentioned there, Trae Young, definitely a guy that's made me eat my fair share of crow. I don't think he was going to, be as good as he has been so far in the NBA. Hats off to that guy. I'm definitely rooting for him. I just didn't predict this out of him. So glad to see it, and I like the Hawks in the East as well. So rooting for them. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's jump into some college football here, Noah. Things are really starting to heat up. Conference championships are only a week away. For some teams, there is some big matchups left on the schedule this week. Number 17, North Carolina taking on number 10, Miami. And BYU actually looking to bounce back. That's one thing that I want to talk about because we didn't get to talk about it last week, being that the game was played after our show, is BYU went and played Coastal Carolina in Coastal Carolina and ended up losing a close game. They actually, very reminiscent of the Rams, came up 1 yard short there on a final, last-ditch play. But yeah, BYU's playoff hopes are definitely dead. I don't think Coastal Carolina will make it either, but where they're at right now in the season is probably way beyond their expectations, so they're hyped regardless. But yeah, did you expect BYU to lose that game, Noah? And what kind of were your takeaways from that game?
I wouldn't say I expected it, but you definitely can't say you're too surprised. You have to give Coastal Carolina their respect. Both these teams were 9-0 coming into the game. And like you mentioned, very close game, came down to a 1 yard short play. And BYU BYU just, they didn't get it done. And, we're both big fans of Zach Wilson. I think he's had a great season, but you've got to give this Coastal Carolina team credit. They're now a very solid 10-0. Like you mentioned, I don't think they'll make the playoffs or anything, and BYU's chances are now dead, but they're definitely a good football team because BYU, I think they are a good team as well. Now I'm interested to see what Cincy does down the stretch and if they can still make it. I'm not too sure there, but it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, like we said last week, Noah, and I think we both agreed on this. BYU needed to schedule Cincy. Even if they had lost that game, I feel like that's who they should have played. That's the other, at large school trying to get into the playoffs, which, it still looks like that 4 seed is going to be open. One actual big thing that happened in college football this week as well is that, the Big Ten did vote to change the requirement of 6 games to make the conference championship. So Ohio State, whether they win or lose this weekend, will be playing in that conference championship game against Northwestern. And there's been a lot of controversy. Dabo speaking out on it today. Should Ohio State with only 6 wins when you have these, other very quality teams at 10 or even potentially 11 wins? And this is a really tough subject for me to discuss, Noah. I'm not going to lie, because one, is Ohio State a top 4 team in the country? Absolutely. The talent's there, the coaching's there. But at the same time, I got to really feel for some of these other teams, like a Texas A&M, where you've gone out and played your entire schedule. You've played all SEC. You've lost only to Alabama, beat a very good Florida team. And you're going to finish your season at 10 wins should you win this weekend. And here's an Ohio State team that only played 6 wins. So I definitely see both sides of the debate, Noah. Like I said, I don't know if I feel really, really strongly one way or another. It's just a really tough year with COVID. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Noah?
Well, my opinion on it, and I think you made some good points there. I think the Big Ten completely fucked it up from the start. Like you mentioned, the shortened schedule, but the main thing that I took away from them changing that rule, nothing against Ohio State, nothing against whoever voted on it. I just think it's very weird that you make a clearly established rule, and then once it actually comes into effect, you just change it. I think that undermines the idea that it's a rule that you can just change it whenever. So, I think the Big Ten looks very bad here because, like you mentioned, Ohio State, I think with the shortened schedule, it's already going to be a little bit tougher for them. But like you mentioned, they're also a top 4 team. So I was kind of sitting on the fence with it. And, when I heard that they weren't going to make the championship game, I was like, well, that's it. I don't think they're going to make it. And then the Big Ten just suddenly changes this rule. Not against Ohio State. I obviously don't like them here, but I think that's on the Big Ten. I think it sends a very weird message that, yeah, we know we made this rule, but we'll just change it because it involves Ohio State. I think that the Big Ten looks very poor on this.
Yeah, most definitely. SEC got their plan in place very early. 10-game conference only. ACC, same thing, except they allowed for one non-conference game. The Big Ten looked like maybe they weren't even going to play, and then at the last minute decide, hey, let's put a season together. And now you're at, jeopardy of not even having a team in the playoffs despite having Ohio State. I feel like probably should Ohio State win the conference championship against, a tough Northwestern team, but I think that they're going to get it done. They're probably going to get in. I don't see how they don't. Probably only at the 4 spot. Because if Alabama wins, I got to give them the 1 seed. Notre Dame wins, I got to give them the 2 seed. And then you got Ohio State at that 3 to 4 seed. But, regardless, that 4 seed still, even if Ohio State gets in, that 4 seed is really going to be up in the air. And it may be a controversial decision that upsets a lot of people or makes a few people happy. There's just so many scenarios right now. And, actually one other thing that I did see, Noah, is we do have teams that are opting out of bowl games altogether. We've had a few teams the past couple of days decide that they're not going to play their bowl games. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, hey, just don't do any bowl games except for the playoffs and expand it to an 18 format, which, I honestly wouldn't be against, especially with COVID and, some teams playing 10 or 11 games and some teams only playing 6 like Ohio State. I definitely wouldn't be opposed to that at all. I feel like there'd be much less controversy. The teams that should be in the playoffs would definitely be put in.
Yeah, I agree. We've obviously talked about the playoff system before. The 14 playoff, it was a good step in the right direction. No one would deny that. I understand that people like it because it's exclusive and it makes the race very exciting, and I can agree with that. But I think it also gets a little ridiculous when, You potentially have undefeated teams that don't even make the playoffs. And, how many deserving teams are you going to see left out just because only 4 teams can make it? And, we all know the committee is not an unbiased entity. They have their biases. Um, here's something I'm thinking. Clemson, we know they're going to make it. Unless Notre Dame gets absolutely destroyed, I think they'll make it. Alabama, if they beat you guys, they'll definitely make it. What I'm wondering here, Garth, about Ohio State and this whole will they make the playoff thing. If you guys beat Alabama, you guys will make the playoffs. Do you think that they would put Alabama in even though they lost the championship game over in Ohio State?
It is very possible because, we have seen it in the past where 2 SEC teams have made it in. But, that it's a very good point that you make. And I think it really reinforces why I would be so, strongly in support of an 18 playoff because, look, should the teams that win, you got Alabama in at number 1, either Clemson or Notre Dame in at the 2 spot. Ohio State gets in. The loser of Clemson Notre Dame gets in. That's only 4 teams right there. 4 teams that most people would agree that should be in the playoffs. You still have another 4 spots. I feel like Texas A&M with only 1 loss would definitely get in there. That's 5 of the 8. Maybe Florida gets in at like 7 or 8 seed despite losing to Alabama. And then you can get Cincy in there, which, in a 4-team playoff, I don't think that they should get put in. Maybe at 4, I don't know. But if there's 8, there's no way they don't get in with 8 teams. I just feel like even if it's just this year, 8 teams makes so much sense.
Yeah, I agree. And, the committee has done this before. I think the year we went to the championship game, Alabama wasn't in the SEC championship game. It was us versus Auburn. And we beat Auburn, obviously. And we went on to the playoffs. And, we all know how that went. But, Alabama didn't win the SEC that year. And I believe Ohio State did win the Big Ten, and they were left out over Alabama. And, the rest is history. This is something the committee has done before. And, the fact that Ohio State will play even less games than that year, and, they obviously have an Alabama, I wouldn't say bias because I think it is deserved, but they do have a inclination towards Alabama. I could absolutely see that happening. Like you mentioned, the 18 playoff. I understand people want to see absolute best teams, so that does work towards the 14 playoff. But the fact is, if they are the absolute best teams, a team like Alabama or a team like Clemson, will they really have much problem beating a team like, say, a Cincy? If they want to show they're the best team, they should be able to beat teams like that. So
yeah, most definitely. I want to make sure I take some time to throw up some comments here. I promise that, we're both seeing your comments come in. Mike asking me, Garth, why don't you ever wear Charger stuff on here? I actually have, Mike. I don't know if you caught the shows, but I believe I've worn my Rivers jersey twice, and I've definitely worn the LT jersey once. And a big reason of that is for this guy right here, Philip Rivers with the Colts. I've been really excited with their season. I'll get more into that when we do get over to our NFL side of things. But yeah, you guys are commenting like crazy tonight. I love it. I'm not ignoring any of you guys trying to get you guys involved here. David also asking, which is kind of becoming the question of the week here with Dave specifically. Tonight I got some Southern Comfort and some Coke actually, so hopefully that'll fire you up. But yeah, college football, there's a lot of games this week that don't really mean a lot, but there's also some games that do. UNC potentially could fall out of the top 25 with a loss to Miami, and Miami looking to continue what's been a great season. Another really big game that me personally, I don't get super excited about. I do watch it, most years, is this game right here. We have Army taking on Navy. I forget the exact how many years it's been, but it's the first game at West Point in, a really, really long time. It's really cool to see, despite everything that's happened this year in COVID, that these two teams will still be facing off. Neither one are ranked, unfortunately, but it's still going to be a really good game. And another game that jumps out at me, Noah, is your number 9 Georgia Bulldogs traveling to Missouri. I think you guys are going to get it done, Noah. Don't get me wrong. JT Daniels probably going to have another stellar performance, in my opinion. But that Mizzou team, they haven't had the best of seasons. But being at number 25 right now for, new coach, I believe, or, he's only been there for a couple seasons now, and a new quarterback, they got a lot going in the right direction on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm really looking forward to that game. What are your thoughts with, Georgia and JT Daniels headed up there to Mizzou?
Well, I'm certainly not going to underestimate Mizzou in this game. We've had some convincing games occasionally against them, but most of the time, I think that they actually play us very well. I remember a game a few years ago when we started Jacob Eason. We needed a fourth down play to win the game. If we didn't get that play, the game was over. They've always been, as long as I've watched them, sure they've never been an elite team, but I've always thought they're a good team, pretty well coached with some good players. So, like you mentioned, going on the road, and they're ranked as well. They're number 25. So, this isn't a team that we can underestimate. But like you mentioned, I think we should get it done. I think we are the better team on paper. Obviously, games aren't played on paper, but you would expect us to win that game. And, JT Daniels, I mean, what can I say about him? I think he's been very great, very good so far, about as great as we could expect. And, like I mentioned, it just ticks me off we didn't do it earlier, but hopefully he can prove that he's our future guy. He's still only a sophomore, and like you mentioned last week, there's no eligibility for this season. You're not going to lose a year, so we could still have a few really good years with JT if he obviously doesn't leave for the draft, which I don't think he will. But obviously, you never know. Some of these athletes, they just do things that you don't really expect. Hopefully, he stays, and hopefully he continues to look good down the stretch.
Yeah, and one thing that I pulled up here because I wanted to mention it is the quarterback for Mizzou this week is a true freshman, Connor Bazelak, who hasn't started the whole season. I don't know exactly how many games he's played, but he's actually been pretty phenomenal for them. Just over 2,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions with a QBR of just under 80. And I think that's why this team has a lot of promise moving forward on the offense side of the ball. Is I really like this kid now from what I've seen so far. Being a true freshman, not having the experience, playing SEC teams, I really like what I've seen out of him so far. Mizzou playing in the SEC, does a good job of holding their own. They're definitely out recruited every year. They don't have the star power that a lot of these big SEC schools have. And yet, for the most part, they, are pretty competitive. They usually play us pretty tough. So, if you're a Mizzou fan right now, yeah, granted you're not winning the East or anything like that, but I think with Connor Bazelak and the staff that's there, especially the head coach, I think there's some stuff to be excited about moving forward for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, they're always. I can't remember maybe one or two teams they've had that aren't very good, but other than that, I think they're always a very consistently good team. They're a team you cannot underestimate. Sure, they're not a division winner or a title winner or anything like that, but they're always a very good team. And going on the road there, I expect a very difficult game. And like you mentioned, Connor Bazelak, for a true freshman, he's completing 69% of his passes. I think that's very impressive, and they have a really effective running game as well. Larry Roundtree third, 11 touchdowns on the season. He's averaging 4.9 yards per carry. So, our defense is good, but they're going to have a test, and I think it's going to be a very good test for how we're going to develop in the coming years with JT Daniels. If he can be that future guy, if our team does have a future with him, because the 2 times we played really good offenses, in my opinion, we kind of folded. And I think that Mizzou is going to give us everything that they have, and they're a good team. So we need to come out and show that we can beat them.
Yeah, and a guy that you mentioned there, Noah Roundtree, he's personally a guy that I think could be, a sleeper in the draft. Really solid player. I really like that guy. He doesn't playing for Mizzou and being in the SEC with the teams like Alabama, and how unreal Devontae Smith has been this season. He really doesn't get talked about a whole lot, except for maybe highlights here and there when they show Mizzou games. But he's a guy that I really like. If somebody needs some offensive help, definitely a guy you could snag second, third, maybe even fourth round. So that's a name to look out for in the draft. Have a favorite NFL team that needs some offensive help. Definitely a guy you want to have on your draft board at some point. Josh here saying that Justin Fields will take Minshew's job in Jacksonville. Yeah, man. Minshew mania did not pan out, at least as of right now. He looked really promising, got some people down there in Duval really excited, and, it just hasn't been the same since. Whether or not Justin Fields is the guy that ends up in Jacksonville, I can't say that. It's very possible, but, we'll have to wait and see where all these quarterbacks do go in the draft. And with that, Noah, just because there really isn't a whole lot of, huge, big games and conference championships being 1 week away, let's go ahead and let's shift gears here and jump over to the NFL. Last night, the Rams took on the New England Patriots, and if you guys did have a chance to catch that game, absolutely abysmal offense from the New England Patriots after they blew out my Chargers. I think that Rams defense showed yet again that it is legit and it can play with, some of the best teams in the NFL. And, Cam Newton at one point was 2 for 5 with 5 passing yards and a pick 6 early on in that game. And Bill Belichick coming out and saying, hey, look, Cam Newton's still our guy. Patriots fans are not very excited right now. They were out, I think after last week, there was a lot of hype like, hey, we could win out and make the playoffs. I don't think that's the case right now, Noah. Even with Bill Belichick, the team's not there, Noah. And Cam Newton's not playing well.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I was actually surprised they managed to claw their way back to 6-6 and even get in the conversation. I just think that team, Cam, like you mentioned, I think he's had a terrible season after a promising start. I think the defense doesn't look as good as it did last year when it was really the highlight of their team. I think the players have just really regressed there. And, we've talked about the Rams a ton since we started the show. Big fan of the Rams. I think they're a very complete team. Their offense is solid. Their defense is very good. And, you got to give credit to them. Jared Goff didn't have a good game yesterday, but their rookie running back, this guy named Cam Akers, very good timing right there. Former Florida State Seminole, actually, if Mike is still in here. Cameron Akers is just, a beast. He's been buried on the depth chart behind Darrell Henderson, Malcolm Brown. And I think those two are good running backs, but this Akers guy, I think he's got superstar potential. They need to keep giving him the ball because, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I'm sure some people would disagree. I think Jonathan Taylor coming into the NFL from that running back class, I think he was the most NFL ready. But in my opinion, I think that the running back that has the most potential from that class was playing last night, and he was destroying that Patriots defense because I think the sky's the limit for that kid.
Yeah, he had 171 yards on 29 carries for, just barely shy of 6 yards a carry. That's, nothing short of impressive. Another thing with that game is Jarrett Stidham actually came in there late, 5 for 7, 7 passing attempts, which isn't anything crazy, but I think that potentially could be the most he's had thus far this season. So, even though Bill Belichick is saying to the media, hey, look, guys, Cam Newton is still our guy here at quarterback, it definitely shows that he's not afraid to put Stidham in there should he have to. And, it's kind of weird because we really don't know what this guy's going to be, Jarrett Stidham. He's just had very limited play here and there. I'm kind of interested to see later down the road, especially with them out of playoff contention, with the Bills, likely to win that division, but, the Dolphins hot on their heels as well, whichever one doesn't win should be a wildcard team. If you're Bill, are you going to play Jarrett Stidham and see what he's got,
I think it's very interesting. Obviously, we have to remember that Jarrett Stidham, he's not a first-round pick or anything. He was taken in the 4th round. But in my opinion, when I watched Jarrett Stidham in college, I thought he was actually a good quarterback. I just thought he was on some teams that weren't very good. I think you'd agree. I don't think Gus Malzahn is a very good coach. I think he's had some really good talent, and I think that team has underperformed at certain times. But when they were struggling a few years ago, I thought Jarrett Stidham was actually a highlight for him. I think he's accurate. I don't think he has superstar talent or anything, but I think he's pretty smart. I think he throws a good ball on occasion, and he has good accuracy. So for a 4th-round pick, I think he definitely has some potential. And one thing I'd like to bring up, Bill Belichick's drafting record, excuse me. his record at drafting first round picks is actually terrible. Where he succeeds is in the later rounds. So I think that actually might, based on trends, I think that actually might help Jared Stidham, because if he was a first round quarterback, Bill hasn't really hit on any first rounders. I think the last one he hit on was probably Dante Hightower, and that was back in 2012. So he has an eye for these late round gems that turn into something. And I think Jared Stidham, he has a good football mind. He's accurate. I think he has the tools to become a good quarterback. Obviously, it remains to be seen because we've barely seen him play, and I don't think the team is very good this year. So we'll see. I'd like to see what he can do. I liked him in college, even though he played for a team I despise.
Yeah, and Josh, you're agreeing with that Cam Akers went off last night, saying that it's best rookie rushing performance of the season. And I think that Josh is right here, because the only other person that jumps to mind that's had a really solid performance as a rookie running back this year is Jonathan Taylor, but he hasn't had a performance quite like this. Cam Akers kind of just went out there and dominated the entire game, all 4 quarters. Jonathan Taylor, I think his best performance is probably somewhere around 100 yards and 1 touchdown. So yeah, most definitely Josh. And David agreeing with you as well here, Noah, that he thinks that Jonathan Taylor was the most NFL ready, but Akers has the most potential. And one thing that I do want to point out is, yes, the Rams do have a very good O-line, don't get me wrong. But I think that the Colts is even better, at least this season specifically, especially Rams having Whitworth out at left tackle, who's been a huge staple of that offensive line for several seasons. And a guy's been a perennial Pro Bowler and all-pro level, offensive lineman there. So that definitely hurts their line. But yeah, that's definitely something I agree with, the viewers here and Noah as well. But speaking of that, Noah, that does remind me to talk about the Colts here. And I already showed him once, but my guy, Phillip Rivers, who, despite he's been getting some flack. I'm not going to lie. I've seen a lot of people saying that, he doesn't have it anymore, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to, come out here and say, Rivers is in his prime. He's going to light it up every week. That's not the case, but, it seems like every week this guy's improving. He had a really good performance last week against the Texans. Pull up the numbers here real quickly. Let's see here. 27 for 35 for 285 yards and 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. That's a pretty damn good performance out of a team that has, a defense that can carry the team and a run game where they like to run the ball a lot. And with that said, Noah, that AFC South is back wide open. Titans going down against the Browns, who, quite frankly, pounded them last week. They did come back late. I think they scored a lot in garbage time, but man, did the Browns take it to the Titans for most of that game. And now we have a tie once again at the top of the AFC South. And the Colts have their work cut out for them. Very tough schedule moving forward with the Raiders this week and the Steelers in 2 weeks. But, it's wide open.
Yeah, I'm glad to see that the race is back, because we kind of had a feeling that once the Titans beat the Colts 2 weeks ago, that maybe they would run away in the division, but that hasn't been the case. The Colts, look, we all know the Texans are a good team, but they still have very good players. Deshaun Watson is going off this year on a garbage team. I think David Johnson is still a good running back. He just has to get his health back and get going. And, Brandon Cooks, Kiki QT, I think they have some receivers that I actually like. So I definitely think that
Fuller suspended there. That's kind of a loss for that offense.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. But I think on their day, they're a team that can give you some trouble. And, this was a close game. But like you mentioned, I think the difference in quality between the teams shows up. Phillip Rivers, like we mentioned, is he that elite guy anymore? No, but 27 to 35, like you mentioned, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers is the main thing. I think that's what you should expect from a team like that, but he did his job. And that offensive line, I mean, Jonathan Taylor's averaging 7 yards a carry in that game. That's going to get it done. So, T.Y., we got to give our credit as well. We've talked a lot about T.Y. Hilton and how, does he have it anymore? 8 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown that game. Easily his best game of the season. Maybe he's getting some momentum back. And, man, the Titans – I can understand losing the Browns, because I think the Browns are a good team. You got to give credit. The Browns are 9-3, which I don't think a lot of people have mentioned. That is a very good team right there with a very good record. But the way they lost, I, if they had lost, okay. But the fact that they were just getting their doors blown off in the first half, they were down 38-7 at halftime. I know the final score was 41-35. I think a lot of that was Cleveland was probably playing prevent defense at the end of the game, and I'm sure you know my thoughts on prevent defense, but that's a whole nother story. But I don't think that the final score really told the story. I think the Browns completely dominated this game, and then when it got completely out of control, they started to let up a bit, and the score looked better than it actually was. Baker. He's had a lot of critics. I've been one as well in recent weeks, or last season especially. But 334 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. Absolutely no complaints about that game. Obviously, Nick Chubb, this was my guy, absolute beast. And I think that the receivers, I think he had touchdown passes to 4 different receivers actually. So they're spreading the ball around. It's not just one guy carrying the load. And something I want to point out here that I actually saw a stat recently. I think when you compare the Baker's numbers to when Odell was playing and when he hasn't, I think Baker has actually played way better without Odell. So that kind of makes me wonder, does Baker kind of target Odell too much because he's talented? Is he making stupid decisions when Odell is there? Something very interesting to think about, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I gotta agree completely with you on that score really didn't tell the whole tale of the game. Like I said, a lot of touchdowns late in garbage time where the Browns were probably playing very conservative. And the Browns, I feel like the offensive skill that they've had that we've been talking about since they brought all of those guys in free agency is really starting to finally come together. And in my personal opinion, are they my Super Bowl pick? Probably not. But the Browns are a very dangerous team right now. I think this is a team that if you don't show up to play and you're not playing your best football, is a team that is going to put it to you. And actually, another good point here is with the Steelers having lost last week, this division is still up for the grabs, much like the AFC South. The Browns are still behind. It's not tied up like the Colts Titans, but the Steelers having to face the Colts, that's potentially a game they could lose. So they got to keep their foot on the gas. They can't let up. They need to win out. And the Browns, they got to win out as well because they're definitely in this. I want to go ahead and get some comments here, Noah, because they've been coming in like crazy. David saying that Clyde Edwards-Helaire first game was fantastic, and Sean following that up with sleeping on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's a guy me and Noah both love. We're both really rooting for the guy, and definitely he's probably Jonathan Taylor, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and now Cam Akers, should he continue, are definitely the 3 best performing rookie running backs this season. And Mike adding that he's in a loaded offense, so he could have a longer career, in my opinion. Most definitely. He isn't relied upon to be the workhorse and pound the ball between the tackles, 30 carries a game. But yeah, definitely Clyde Edwards-Helaire, huge shout out to him. I know you are a really big fan of him, Noah, as well.
Yeah, everyone knows my opinions on Clyde. I just love this kid. That LSU team had a lot of talent, but Clyde was probably my favorite player on that offense. He's not a very big running back, but this is a guy that I saw, bowling over these Alabama defenders in that game that they won. Just completely elusive, great receiver. I think that he hasn't been utilized as much in the second half of the season because I think the Chiefs have been blowing out some teams, so they kind of rest him towards the end. But, his start of the season was incredible. I think he's got all the skill set to be a very good running back. Absolutely, man. I just hate prevent defense. It's a joke. It is a joke. What you've done the entire game is work. So, let's just stand off 20 yards line and complete, easy passes all the time. But, I could go on for 50 minutes on that. But, yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers. James Robinson as well in the Jags. We haven't even mentioned him. I think he's had a very good season. The team just sucks, so he hasn't gotten as much attention. But I think a very good class for running backs, and I'm excited to see how they all play because I'm a Falcons fan, but in my opinion, I'm a football fan first. So I like to see all these stories and these young guys that come in and do well. Justin Jefferson, Herbert, guys like that. And I think football. I think it feels better that the Browns are finally a good team because they've just been an underdog story and bad for so long. So to see them have their first really good team and probably since the original Browns were there, um, I'm very happy to see that.
Yeah, and another comment here that I want to touch on real quick is David saying that Hilton can still get open against zone defense. I'm glad that David took the time to mention T.Y. Hilton now, because here's one thing that I wanted to point out with the Colts is that the last 2 weeks against both the Titans and the Texans, T.Y. Hilton against the Titans, 4 receptions for 81 yards, 20.2 yards per catch, and a touchdown. And then last week with the Texans, 8 receptions for 110 yards, average of 14 yards per catch for a touchdown. He might finally be starting to really heat up and get back to, at least something similar to where he was at before Andrew Luck departed, and, that all the injuries that he's dealt with. Should he continue having good performances like this? No, that's going to be a huge help to that defense, that offense. So we've talked a lot about how, despite T.Y. Hilton, there really isn't a lot of guys on that offense that are, experienced and well proven and have the numbers to back up, their talent. Should T.Y. Hilton continue what he's been doing the past couple of weeks, definitely going to be a huge boost for them. Definitely going to need him to show up big, come that game with the Steelers. But, I'm hoping he can.
Yeah, that would be absolutely massive for them. Obviously he's 31, so you probably won't see the same guy, but when T.Y. Hilton was at his best, this is a guy that has blazing speed. He has pretty reliable hands, and once he catches the ball, good luck as a defender because his acceleration is incredible. He was an incredible receiver, and I still think he can be serviceable now. He's had a tough season, like we mentioned, but like you said, past 2 weeks, he scored TDs. He's been very productive. If he can get back on form, I think that makes his Colts defense really scary, especially with their offensive line, Jonathan Taylor, and Phillip Rivers. T.Y., I think he's a guy that a lot of people know that has had a good career. I don't think people realize he's just short of 600 catches and 10,000 yards for his career. This is a damn good receiver right here. And if he can get his mojo back that he's kind of lost the past season and a half, look out for that Colts passing game.
Yeah, most definitely. And definitely going to be a huge help to Phillip Rivers, a guy who most of his career, despite maybe not having the best offensive line or team overall around him, has usually had, at least one very good, very reliable receiver, Malcolm Floyd, Vincent Jackson, Keenan Allen, Antonio Gates. So, that could be a really, really big help to him. So I'm rooting for T.Y. Hill, I'm rooting for Phillip Rivers, and I'm rooting for the Colts, if I'm being blatantly honest there. I want to go ahead and throw this up real quick. I'm going to go ahead and jump to a commercial break, guys, here real quickly. But this is something that me and Noah are going to touch on when we get back. Is OBJ. I just pulled up his contract here. I do want to discuss that. As Noah mentioned, they do seem to be playing better with OBJ not on the field. Will they move him or not in potential landing spots? But with that said, I want to go ahead and shout out our good friends over at Crowd Play. Make sure you guys go ahead and check them out on either the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store if you guys haven't already. Completely free to play. If you love sports, you'll love this app. It's a good chance to win money and prizes, and make sure you guys use code THEBOX for 10% off when you go ahead and sign up. And I'll go ahead and throw this up, and we'll be right back after a short break, guys. All right, so we are back, guys. I'm going to go ahead and throw these comments right back up here again. Mike saying the Browns seem to be better without OBJ. Be surprised if they don't move on from him this offseason.
And Garth, I just did some research on this. We'll go into the stats in a minute. I'm just going to ask you a question. Since Odell Beckham has been hurt, how many interceptions do you think that Baker Mayfield has thrown?
I honestly don't have a clue in the world, but I'm going to go on a limb here, Noah, and guess just one.
0. He has thrown 0 interceptions since Odell has been hurt, which I thought when I saw that, I thought he was playing well since Odell's been hurt, but I think that's insane. And when I look at this, have we been underestimating Baker Mayfield all this time, or is he actually just a good quarterback that maybe forces too many, balls that aren't there to a guy that has superstar ability? And we got to give credit. Obviously, Odell is a fantastic talent. I think he is a fantastic receiver. But is he a bit overrated? I think this is a guy that when he makes these flashy plays, but every time I saw him play in the playoffs when he was on the Giants, I thought he looked very poor. I don't even know if he has a playoff career to catch. He might have one or two, but I just remember him dropping a lot of balls that are pretty easy. I think he makes the extraordinary look ordinary, and the ordinary kind of struggles with sometimes. And I pulled up the stats. Luckily, Pro Football Reference is a fantastic website. I can literally get game logs up and see what Baker Mayfield's stats are from week to week. And from week 1 to 7, when Odell actually played, he threw 7 interceptions to 15 touchdowns. Good ratio, but 7 interceptions in 7 games. If you're throwing a pick a game, I don't think that's a very good ratio. Completing 63% of his passes, a 94.5 quarterback rating. So respectable stats. But since Odell has been out from week 8 to week 13. Baker's completing 62%, so a little bit down, but 6 touchdowns to no interceptions, a 103.2 quarterback rating. So, the numbers don't lie. Odell's a great receiver, but Baker's stats have actually improved without him. So, and like I mentioned in that Titans game, 4 touchdowns to 4 different receivers. Odell's a great talent, but I'm starting to think maybe when he isn't there that Baker makes better decisions.
Yeah, most definitely. And it looks like both Mike and Dave are agreeing on that he'll probably be dealt at the end of the season. That's one thing that I want to talk about is he is still under contract, and he is under contract until the 2023 season. The entire 2023 season. 2024, he would be a free agent. And with that said, looking at the numbers here, next season he's going to be due $14.5 million. And then the following 2 seasons, $13.75 million. That's a pretty damn big contract, especially for a wide receiver, and especially for a wide receiver who's not named Julio Jones. And putting up ungodly numbers every season. So will he get moved? It's very possible, especially with the success the Browns have had without him on the field, like Noah pointed out. But in the sense of money, who is going to want to go out and pick up this contract? I don't know if there's a team that's going to be really excited to go, hey, let's go get this OBJ guy who hasn't really been the same since his early days with the Giants. And, like Noah said, yeah, he makes some phenomenal catches here and there, but overall the productivity is just not there. And I don't know if there's a team that's going to go out there and want to, pick him up really badly, or if they do, they're probably not going to give much up to acquire him.
It's very tough because we all know his talent, but as I look at I pulled up his stats right here, and what I'm looking at just numbers wise, it kind of supports what I think. I think he's a guy that's a bit overrated. His career high in receiving yards per season is 1,450, which is good. He's had 2 other 1,300-yard seasons, but other than that, since 2017, he's had 302 because he got injured for that season. 1,052, 1,035, and then 319 this year when he got injured again. So this is a guy that hasn't topped, even 1,100 yards since 2016. And the touchdown production isn't good either. 3 touchdowns, 6, 4, and 3. Julio gets a lot of crap for not scoring touchdowns. Odell doesn't do it either, and his production yardage-wise is vastly inferior to a guy like Julio. So Is he a guy that he's not as good as he used to be, and we're just kind of clinging on to that one catch he made? I'm starting to think that. And, like I mentioned, in that playoff game, he had 4 catches for 28 yards. I don't see any drop numbers here, but I know he had at least 2 in that game. So, yeah, all the talent in the world, but if it doesn't translate, I don't think Odell is a top 5 receiver at all. And I seriously think you can make an argument. I don't even think he's top 10.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that come to mind, real quickly ahead of him. Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans. There's definitely a lot of guys. And I just didn't put too much thought into that. They're just right off the top of my head. But yeah, I could not say he's top 5. You got to have the productivity. I don't care how talented you are. If you can't put up the numbers, you don't deserve that title of top 5 in the NFL. Top 10 maybe, somewhere in that 7 to 10 spot maybe. But if I sat down and made a really solid list, who knows? He probably wouldn't even be in my top 10. But like I said, no, you think that, is there any teams out there that come to mind that are going to want to trade for this guy and pick up that monster contract for 2 seasons?
Absolutely. I'm sure someone would do it. He's just too good for someone not to now. Can you give me those contract numbers again, real quick?
Yeah, so he's due 14.5 million this year, which obviously isn't going to affect anybody picking him up. But he's due 14 million this year. Next year he will be due 14.5 million dollars. And one thing that I want to add real quickly here, Noah, that I personally don't think about because I think of him being a younger guy. But come next season, he's already going to be 28 at the start of the season, so he's closing in on that 30 mark already.
Yeah, it's very interesting with Odell, and I pulled up the stats here as well. I'm just wondering, would the Browns want to eat all that cap? Because, I'm looking at right here, 2020, that obviously doesn't matter, but 2021, dead cap of 12.7 million. If they want to cut ties with him that much, I could see him doing it, but does that factor in their decision? I guess we'll see. As for what teams would want him, a lot of teams would definitely go for a receiver like him. It's hard to think of specific examples just off the top of my head, but what if it? Obviously, the Giants wouldn't do it, but I think a team. What about a team like the Redskins? Get another receiver alongside Terry McLaurin. I think that would make the offense very deadly. AFC wise, would a team like the Bills go for him? Put him alongside Diggs? Maybe, maybe not. I'm not sure that the Bills want to do that, but there's certainly a lot of teams that would trade for him. It's just it's who's going to do that? Who's going to take that cap on, like you mentioned, the potential drama that comes with them, drops, stuff like that. So it's going to be very interesting with Odell, but I kind of agree with Mike and David there. I think that Cleveland, the fact that their offense has performed so well without him, I think that's not a very good sign for Odell right there.
Yeah, and David saying Jets, and that was actually one team that came to mind for me. The 2 teams that jump out to me are the Jets. They're going to have a lot of cap space. Potentially Trevor Lawrence at quarterback after the NFL draft. And as far as skill position goes, it's just not there. There isn't really much of a team there whatsoever. But I could definitely see them picking up that contract on Odell Beckham with all the cap space they're going to have. And the other one being the Lions. They fired Matt Patricia. They're going to be looking for a coach. They're definitely going to want to, try and create some sort of spark on the offensive side of the ball. So I could definitely see them going after him. But shifting gears here now, another guy who is really a big question mark moving forward, his future and where he's going to be at, is Carson Wentz. It came out this week. Doug Peterson, Jalen Hurts is the starter for this week after coming in late last week and playing pretty well in limited snaps. I kind of feel for Carson Wentz. Don't get me wrong. A lot of people have hyped him up, and it does, cause me not to have as much sympathy towards the guy. But the team, the Eagles team is just not there. You've got a ton of old guys, who need replacing with younger talent. You've got a lot of injuries. The skill group is just not there. The wide receivers, couldn't catch a cold if they tried. So definitely I feel for the guy and being hit so much with a terrible offensive line. Rumors are potentially Colts in the postseason with Philip Rivers most likely retiring. I don't know how that QB situation is going to go. He is under a huge contract now and is owed a lot of money, so we'll have to see how that one plays out.
It's very interesting with Carson. I've been a fan of him for a few years. I've been one of the guys actually defending him. And I realize the team is not good around him, but I still think it's kind of hard to defend him this last season because, in my opinion, last season the team wasn't good either. And I think last season Carson Wentz was 100 times better than he's been this season. Just compare the numbers between, say, the 3 years before this and this one. It's not even close. The 72.8 quarterback rating is just terrible. 15 interceptions, easily, a career high. His career interception percent is 2%. This year it's 3.4. That is very staggering. For comparison's sake, I believe Brett Favre's career interception is 3%. So he's throwing interceptions at a higher rate than Brett Favre did in his career. He's only completing 57% of his passes. That's terrible. So, it's hard for me to defend him a lot this season because I realize the team is bad. The offense line is terrible. The receivers, but that was the case last year as well, and I thought he was a lot better than he was this season. So it's going to be very interesting. Will he stay? Will he leave? I think that there's a lot of dead cap they're going to have to eat if they want to trade him. But, it's just – I think it just shows how incompetent the Eagles management has been, that a guy that's making $32 million a season is now on the bench. I think you have to look at Howie Roseman there, and he's a guy that got a lot of hype a few seasons ago when they won the Super Bowl for the team that he built. You've really got to question him now because, I like Jalen Hurts. I think he does have an NFL future, but you've got a guy making over $30 million on the bench for an unproven rookie that's, just kind of being thrown to the wolves behind that terrible offensive line, no receivers. I feel for Hurts right there, but, you've really got to question the management.
Yeah, most definitely. Talk about going from the absolute highest of highs, winning the Super Bowl, to where they're at now. And another interesting point to point out here is, maybe the Eagles are protecting their investment. Maybe they're saying, Carson Wentz, he's our guy. We're paying him all kinds of money, but he's going out there every week and being pummeled and having nobody to throw the football with. And, it's not a good situation. Maybe we should try and keep him healthy moving forward and, try and get some more pieces around him in the offseason. I can't for sure say, what the Eagles' ultimate goal is with him, whether if they're seriously considering to move on from him and deal him away to get some pieces, or, if they're still planning on him being the centerpiece of that offense, and they're just trying to keep him healthy and not have him have another major injury. I do believe he is the most sacked quarterback in the NFL this season.
Yeah, he is. He's been sacked 50 times, which is obviously not good. And, I think that is a very fair point there. Are they actually protecting him? I'm not so sure. I think that since the management is incompetent, I don't know if they'd actually be that smart to do that. And maybe, like David says there, maybe they are trying to motivate him because he's a guy that, in my opinion, he was the guy from the start. Number 2 overall pick, is consistent starter the entire time he's been there. And now, he's had a down season. He's had, in my opinion, his first really bad season of his career. He's had a lot more good than he has bad. So maybe he kind of needs a kickstarter. But again, is the Eagles management smart enough to do that? I don't know. I really don't. So we're just going to have to see how it goes, I guess. And if he stays or if he goes, only time will tell.
Yeah, and another game here that I want to touch on this week, much opposite the Eagles, two teams that have everything seeming to be going in the right direction. Two quarterbacks are performing very well in the season. We have Pittsburgh going up there to Buffalo, taking on the Bills. Huge game for both of these teams. Bills want to stay atop the AFC East and, or North, or sorry, East, yes. And, Pittsburgh, like I said, Browns with a big win over the Titans. They're, I believe, 2 games back of the Steelers. The Steelers can't really afford to slip up here. They want to keep their foot on the gas and they want to, run away with the division and not let the Browns have a say. Home field advantage isn't the same as it's been in the past, obviously, with COVID and limited fans. But at the end of the day, I feel like you much rather be a 1 or a 2 seed versus a 5 or 6 seed wild card spot having to play on the road all postseason. Um, I don't know who I like in this game, Noah. I feel like Steelers coming off a loss are going to want to bounce back and play really well. And on the other hand, I do really like what's going on up there in Buffalo. Big fan of Josh Allen and that offense. Stephon Diggs has been absolutely phenomenal. Like I just said to Mikey the other day, I think he probably was the best free agent pickup by any team because the seasons he is having is absolutely phenomenal for those Bills.
I think that, Buffalo has had some good receivers over the years, but picking up a guy like Stephon Diggs, who's just a proven number one, and, he was just alongside another number one in Adam Thielen, in my opinion. But, I saw David. I agree, actually. I'm going to pick the Bills in this game. And, it kind of annoys me that they're all picking the Bills because I thought I might be in the minority here. But, I just think when you look at them, Pittsburgh has had a very good season. I think Ben has been great, but it's not going to be easy. And I'm so sick of COVID, man. Just in my opinion, could you imagine a game like this with Bills Mafia? They're just absolutely going crazy. It just really ticks me off. I'm so done with this, but I still think it's going to be a very, very good game. And we've talked a lot about Ben over the weeks. I think he's had a very, very good season. But my pick for most improved player for this season is Josh Allen. He's just been incredible. He had a bit of a rough patch for a few weeks, but then last week against the Bills, 80% of his passes completed, 375, 4 touchdowns, no picks, 139 quarterback rating. I mean, he's just back firing again. We've talked about him a lot. Just what he has done this season has been incredible. He's completing 70% of his passes, which, massive increase. That is easily going to get it done. 106 quarterback rating, and you got to add in the rushing element as well. The fact that he can take off at any time, score touchdowns that way. So I will pick the Bills in that game. I think it'll be close, but I'm going to pick the Steelers to actually drop their second straight.
Yeah, and I'm going to go out here on a limb here and disagree with the majority pick of the show tonight. I'm going to go with this guy right here, Mike Tomlin, to rally the troops, go out there and play a very competitive Buffalo Bills team and get this win. I feel like last week's loss to the Washington football team was very much needed. Me personally, I don't like to see my favorite team be undefeated heading to the playoffs. I feel like 1 or 2 losses, alleviates a lot of pressure and is just better overall for your chances as we've, only seen one team ever go undefeated and win the Super Bowl. I think they're going to bounce back. I think that they're probably sick and tired of this, you cupcake schedule. You guys haven't played anybody. You guys can't win these tough games. You're going to get bounced come playoffs. I think it's going to be a very close, very competitive game that probably comes down to the wire. Just a gut feeling here. I got to go with the Steelers in this one, Noah.
Yeah, and that's perfectly understandable because I'm a big fan of the Steelers, Mike Tomlin, like you mentioned. So I think that's a perfectly fair, reasonable pick. I'm just going to pick the Bills because, do I think they're a better team than the Steelers? Probably not. I still think the Steelers are probably the best in the NFL, but, the best teams in the NFL don't always win. I think going up there to Buffalo, even though there's no fans, I think that will be an advantage for them. Josh Allen's been great, and, we've talked about the Bills' rush defense. It's been their weakness. Well, when I look at the Steelers, I don't think their running backs have particularly produced very well lately. I think James Conner is injured. I don't think Benny Snell was particularly great against Washington. Jalen Samuels isn't a starting running back, in my opinion. I think he's a good change of pace. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup there with the running game. It's going to be a very good game.
Yeah, and Mike actually a little bit ahead of me here. Chiefs versus Finns, a very underrated game this week. Most definitely, Mike. Definitely a game that I want to talk about with Noah tonight. We do have the Kansas City Chiefs going down there, Miami, Florida. Dolphins sitting at 8-4. They're only 1 game back of the Bills actually for the division lead. So this is a big, big game. Kansas City Chiefs want to stay in the mix for that number 1 overall seed, and the Dolphins want to stay in mix for that division. So and that I think the Miami Dolphins defense might be one of the most underrated performers of this NFL season thus far. that defense has been very, very good. I think really for the Dolphins, the biggest question mark is the quarterback position. You know, we still don't know who's going to be the for sure starter, especially come playoffs. Should they, finish the season strong and make it? Tua. I think the hype's there, the talent's there, but obviously he's not proven. He hasn't come out and played the whole season and won all these games for them. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, the biggest thing with him is, he looks really good for 3 or 4 weeks and then kind of, slips up and has these bad games. So I think that's really my biggest question mark for the Dolphins. A, who's playing quarterback, and B, how good are they playing the quarterback position? But, I still like them a lot, especially as a wild card team. I don't know if they can win the division over the Bills. I hope they keep it competitive because I don't want to see the Bills just run away with the division. Nothing against them. I'm just all for some competition there, Noah. But what's your take on this game, and who do you have winning this game?
I think it's going to be a very underrated game here, and my opinion on the Dolphins, especially Brian Flores. Just a massive fan of this guy. I think how he's so quickly just turned this team around. Last season, people were saying could be the worst team in NFL. To now, they're 8-4 and fighting for a division title against a very, very good Bills team. What can you say about the guy? I think he's just an incredible coach. One of the few disciples of Bill Belichick that's actually really worked out. He clearly was paying attention when he was over there. And it's very difficult to obviously pick against the Chiefs. But I might surprise you. I'm actually going to do it. Is it a reasonable pick? I think that the fact that you mentioned the Dolphins defense, they have the third most takeaways in the NFL. I don't know if you knew that, but I think that's very impressive. And when I look at the Chiefs, I think their defense is a unit. It's okay, but it's nothing special. I think that it can be exploited. And you mentioned the quarterbacks there. I think they should start Ryan Fitzpatrick. None against Tua. He's obviously the future. I think he has, the sky's the limit for him. But I think Ryan is more experienced. He obviously has the potential to have a great game. He has potential to have a terrible game too, but I would probably start him. And, I know most people probably pick the Chiefs, and that's perfectly understandable, but I'm just a massive fan of this team this season. I think their defense is really good at, taking the ball away. They're efficient on offense, even if they don't light up the scoreboards or anything like that. So I'm going to pick the upset here. I could easily be wrong, and I'll hold my hands up if I am, but I don't think this Chiefs team is invincible by any means. Dolphins are my team of the season, so I'm going to pick them in this one.
Yeah, and I'm also going to go with probably the more unpopular pick and go Miami Dolphins as well, just for the fact that they are the home team. And like you said, that Chiefs defense is nothing special. I think, last season when they won the Super Bowl, yeah, their defense still wasn't that great, but I think they had a few key guys who really had some really big plays and really big moments that turned the tide and made some difference for them. I don't see that in this defense this season. And the other reason being that I'm just rooting against the Chiefs being a division rival. So I'm going to go Dolphins just like Noah. I hope we get a good game. Lots of good NFL football this weekend. I'm really excited. Mike saying Colts versus Raiders is his pick for game of the week, and David saying that Vikings Bucks. Both are very, very good picks. I'll touch on Mike's here real quick. Colts versus Raiders. Yeah, me and Noah talked about the Colts for a while. Very, very big game for both teams. Raiders looking to stay alive in the AFC playoff hunt, and the Colts looking to stay alive for that division title. Both teams have a lot on the line. Neither team can really afford to lose this game. I'm picking Colts just because that's who I'm rooting for, but I could definitely see the Raiders pulling this one off.
Absolutely. I think they can pull it off, and I think they will. I'm going to pick the Raiders in this game. Nothing against the Colts. I think these are two very, very good teams going up against each other. But when I look at this game, I think the Raiders are in a bit of a skid lately. Obviously they lost to the Chiefs a few weeks ago. We just completely blew the doors off them in that game, and they managed to rebound against the lowly Jets. But 1-2 in the last 3 weeks, I think that okay, sure, we beat them badly, but a close loss to the Chiefs. They obviously already beat the Chiefs early in the season. Derek Carr, we talked about him a few times. I think what he's done this season has been incredible. I think he's really flying under the radar when you look at his stats. 22 touchdowns to 5 picks, completing 68%, 104 quarterback rating. All of that will get it done. And he's only been sacked 19 times in the year, so he's behind a good offensive line led by the man Rodney Hudson. So, it's going to be a very good game. Two good offensive lines going at each other. I think two solid defenses. Um, Really exciting receivers here. I'm going to look for the speed demons on both sides. T.Y. Hilton, Henry Ruggs. It's going to be a very good game. I'm going to pick the Raiders, but you pick the Colts, and I think that's like the Steelers pick, perfectly understandable. I could absolutely see it. I just can't see the Raiders going on a massive skid like they did last season. I think they're a much better team than they were then, and I think they're a definite playoff team.
Yeah, and I gotta agree, Noah. Like I said, I can see this game going either way. Another game mentioned here by our good friend David, Bucks versus Vikings, and his opinion is game of the week. Definitely a big time game. If you're the Bucks, the last few weeks have been really, underperforming and underwhelming for Bucks fans. And you guys got to string together some wins to finish out the season. Because what a letdown would it be to lose out and potentially miss out on playoffs. So Mike and your Bucks, you guys got to flip the switch here. You got to get hot late of the season. I think Tom Brady's got to have some better performances these next few weeks. On the Vikings, I don't know how I feel about this team. I feel like Dalvin Cook probably makes this team a lot better than they really are because he really carries the load on the offensive side and gives them a lot more chances to score the ball. Could they make the playoffs? Yes. Do I think they would go anywhere in the playoffs? I do not. My pick for that division is obviously Aaron Rodgers and that Green Bay Packers team who's been absolutely going off, lighting it up. But yeah, Noah, who's your pick in that Vikings Bucks game?
Obviously we did the pick 'em in Sport Life. I cannot remember who I picked at all. But just looking at this game, Garth, I think you see two teams in completely opposite trajectories. The Bucks, like you mentioned, have been on a bit of a skid. Lost to the Saints a few weeks ago. They lost to the Chiefs. Not been good and not been on a good run, excuse me, and the Vikings. I think this was a team, Garth, early in the season. A lot of people kind of had dead in the water. They started the season, I think, 1-5. And since then, they've gone 5-1 to claw back to 6-6. And two main reasons, in my opinion, when I look at it. Number one, I think a lot of people, including myself, by the way, I can't be a hypocrite here, were criticizing Kirk Cousins a lot because he was playing very poorly. But since they went on this good run, he's completing 70.7% of his passes, 15 touchdowns to 2 picks, a 118.6 quarterback rating. He's just been absolutely phenomenal the past month and a half. And, I get all the questions about can he perform in primetime, stuff like that. I understand all that. But, you just got to give credit where it's due. The past 6 or so games, he's just been phenomenal. And the second factor for why I think they turned around is Justin Jefferson. This guy is just an absolute stud. We've talked a lot about offensive rookie of the year. I was high on Clyde earlier in the season. You're with Herbert. I think Justin Jefferson could potentially be the front runner now because I think you have a superstar in the making right here. This is a guy that came to the NFL. He's only 21 years old. And, he only turned 21 in June. So this is a very young guy who came in as a first-round pick, and he's just completely, not only lived up to expectations, but in my opinion, surpassed them. 1,039 yards on the season already, 7 touchdowns. So he scores touchdowns as well. He's catching 72.6% of his targets. So this is a guy that, he gets open easily. He catches everything that's thrown at him pretty much. And, he's averaging 17 yards per reception. So he's also a deep threat. I think this is a superstar guy right here already. And, I think he's a massive part in turning the season around. You mentioned Dalvin Cook as well. They've got some really good pieces on that offense, and they've really turned it around. And, it's funny I've done all this, talking up the Vikings because I'm actually going to pick the Bucks in this game. I just can't see them, going on an extended skid. I think they're too good of a team, in my opinion. I think it'll be a very good game. Like we've mentioned a few times, I think this is a game that could go either way. But I just can't see the Bucks going on such an extended losing streak. It could happen because the Vikings have been hot, but I'll pick the Bucks.
Yeah, and I got to go Bucks as well, Noah. And touching on Kirk Cousins, I feel like probably a big reason to how good he's been is, definitely a combination of Justin Jefferson, which huge props to that guy. As you said, I don't think I need to add much more to that. He's been absolutely phenomenal. Dalvin Cook as well. But also, I feel like potentially one thing that could really be helping Kirk Cousins is the fact that Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers are getting so much attention and leading the division. The Vikings have kind of been overlooked. They haven't been in the spotlight. They haven't had a lot of these primetime games, huge matchups. It's kind of just been a lot of those quiet, 1 o'clock Sunday games, and Kirk Cousins is, feeling no pressure and just going out there and balling out. And, he's a guy that I've got nothing against. I've always rooted for him. I think he's, got that fire and passion that you like to see out of your quarterback. He just, as we all know, hasn't showed up in the big time games. But, as you said, absolutely phenomenal. He's really turned it around this season. He's on a tear right now. And, if as a Vikings fan out there, you guys, really looking hopeful to end the season promising. But yeah, I got to go Bucks here, like you said. No, I can't see them going on this huge losing streak. Mike mentioned it in the comments that they did have a bye to refocus, and I got to go Bucks. I think Tom Brady, as we've seen here and there, has had very good performances this season with, some really bad performances sprinkled in. But I think I get a really good performance out of Tom Brady this week, and I got to go Bucks. Most definitely got to go Bucks here.
Yeah, I think it's just going to be a fantastic game. And, like you mentioned, college football's schedule may have been lacking, but the NFL schedule this week is just incredible. It really is. Let's not forget our two teams are playing each other, so we got a little bit on the line. The battle of the two rebuilding, choking teams is on this week, so that's going to be very interesting to watch as well. Mike, I didn't even read the comments, so I think that's just another example of our little mind reading that we've got going on here. Is it possible for two teams to choke in the same game?
I'll be honest with you, I actually am rooting for you guys to win because of the fact that I realize that the season's over. We're not getting into the playoffs, so I just want us to have as good of a draft pick as possible. Kind of my take on the season moving forward is one, if we keep losing, there's more chance that Anthony Lynn gets fired. We have a better draft pick. And two is that, I hope Justin Herbert really performs well. Very underwhelming, like we mentioned, first really bad performance of the season by Justin Herbert last week and the absolute shellacking by the New England Patriots. I hope he bounces back and has a really good game against you guys. But, it may sound really odd. I'm not rooting for my team to win. We need to get some offensive line help in there. We got to fill some voids with despite all the talent we have. There's some major voids. I want Herbert to be protected moving forward. I don't want him to be like Phillip Rivers and constantly be under pressure every snap and getting sacked and hit every play. So, will we win? Can both teams choke away a game? I don't know, guys. With Anthony Lynn, anything's possible. I don't know if you guys caught that performance against the Bills, but anything's possible with Anthony Lynn at this point.
Yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, it's obviously been tough for both our teams this year, but I think both teams have some promise. You guys, especially with Justin Herbert, obviously. I think first of all, I think we are better than a 4-8 team. I think we've just been very inconsistent. And obviously, I've talked about Dan Quinn for months, so, let's not get into that again. But I think this is going to be a very interesting game, and I understand that you potentially want your in. Yeah, our defense is so bad. It's been as bad. It's been bad as long as I've watched. They've had one good defense the entire time I've watched them. It's just our management is so incompetent that they make the same mistakes over and over again. As long as I've watched the Falcons, the two main issues have been the defense and the offensive line consistently. It's never been fixed. It was fixed for one season. They've had about two good offensive lines that I can remember, and the same crap over and over again. And I think that we seriously need to change the front office because I think Rich McKay is completely incompetent as a GM. And I think Dirk Cutter is an OC. I liked him the first time, but I think the second time he's been very poor. And, I understand what you're saying. You want your team to lose to get a better draft pick. Maybe I'm just old school. I don't like to see my team purposely lose games. I think it still kind of hurts. Even though you obviously know a team's not going to do anything either way. I still kind of want us to win as many games as we can because with that terrible management, do I think that us getting a higher draft pick will actually help us? I really don't, unless it's a very, obvious pick. But those are, the top 3 or top 5 picks, and there's some teams that are just so bad, like the Jets. They've got that locked down. So, do I think a higher pick will really help us? No, I don't.
Yeah, and I want to build on something you just said there. No, I do gotta agree. Obviously, I don't like my team losing. I don't want us to purposely lose. Like you said, it does still hurt. I think though that my biggest thing with it, Noah, is that I truly feel if Anthony Lynn strings together some wins to end the season, we will keep him as head coach. It's just kind of a gut feeling of mine. I feel like if he shows any sort of glimmer of hope to finish off the season, that Tom Telesco and the Spanos, who, as we all have known, always tend to do the worst decision. I mean, we did leave San Diego after all for a city that doesn't even want us there and a stadium that we don't even own. So that's kind of my biggest thing. I was really hopeful for Anthony Lynn coming in. I feel like he's a great players coach. I feel like he's really good inside the locker room with the players. But as far as the X's and O's and making in-game adjustments and trying to outcoach guys like Andy Reid and John Gruden and Mike Mayock and that staff they got up there and other guys around the league like Bill Belichick, I just don't think that he's there. I think that's kind of what happened to us with going on to take on the Patriots 2 seasons ago in the playoffs. Bill Belichick absolutely out-game planned us, and we made 0 adjustments in that game against them. That's really my biggest thing with Anthony Lynn, and we saw in that Bills game, down 17 points or whatever it is, and you're in the goal line with time expiring, and you decide to run the ball instead of trying to pass it for a touchdown, and just bad clock management throughout. I don't hate Anthony Lynn by any means. I'm rooting for him. I truly am. But I think we got to move on. With Herbert and all the talent on that roster, we got to get the right guy in there.
Yeah, and I completely can understand what you're saying because I think that's what we had with Dan Quinn. I've criticized him a lot. I don't think I've ever once said I hate the guy. I think he's a very nice guy. I just think he's completely incompetent at his job. And I think the fact that you have these nice guys like a Dan Quinn or an Anthony Lynn, I think it hurts your team because, like you mentioned, I think the players probably love playing for a guy like Anthony Lynn. Why not? He's a nice guy. There's probably very little consequences for the players playing like crap. They can just go in, play, just basically run through the motions, go through the motions, play like crap, get their paycheck, and there's no consequence. And, I understand you don't want your coach to be a complete asshole, but I think there needs to be discipline there. I think that's something our team has lacked for a few seasons. I think you guys lack it right now. I think, the culture is completely gone. And, sure, it sounds a little bit cliche, but it's true. If your team is losing and there's no accountability, it's kind of like a snowball, running off a cliff. Just keeps building momentum and keeps getting stronger, and it's kind of hard to stop it. So, I think, like you mentioned, I do like Anthony Lynn. I think, he had a really good season in 2018. I don't think he's a complete moron or anything like that. But, I think he's kind of lost the team right there. And, maybe he's better suited to be a coordinator instead of a head coach.
Yeah, most definitely. And, one thing that really flipped the switch for me this season personally was the trade of Desmond King. The guy was playing absolutely phenomenal. Young talent. Yes, his contract is due and he probably would have wanted, his money. But, why did we get rid of him? 2 reasons. One, I feel like he's butting heads with probably Anthony Lynn and potentially Gus Bradley at DC. And 2, we brought in Chris Harris, who also happens to play slot corner. Here's the thing, though. Has Chris Harris been phenomenal in his career? Absolutely. But, he's up there in age. This guy, we're not going to have him for the next 5 or 6 seasons. Desmond King is the guy that we could have had for the next 5 or 6 seasons. And worst of all, we gave up a guy who was playing absolutely phenomenal for basically nothing. We're just like, here you go, Tennessee Titans. Have Desmond King, one of our best defensive backs, and give us, whatever you want. Give us some leftover Chips Ahoy or, loaf of bread. We don't really care. He's all yours.
Yeah, and I think that's just a really good example of the incompetence of the Chargers organization. And we got to give credit where it's due. It's not all Anthony Lynn. I think Dean Spanos is a complete idiot, and we've obviously mentioned that a lot before. We don't have to go into it again, but yeah, that trade just to trade a guy like Desmond King, who's still really young. He's only 25 years old. His birthday is actually in 2 days, funnily enough. But yeah, he's about to turn 26 in a few days. He's a good up and coming corner, very solid. And they signed Chris Harris, who, like you said, I agree, he's been a very good corner in his career. But this season, he's only played 5 games because he was hurt. He's got no picks on the year. What has he brought to the Chargers? I don't think he's brought anything at all. And, I'm sure he still has a really big contract. You're definitely not paying him for, to miss most of the season and have no picks, I'm sure. So just complete incompetence as usual from Spanos. I think this guy is, I don't use this word often. There's a lot of guys who are incompetent who I just don't think are very good in his job. But I honestly think this guy is a disgrace to the game of football. I think he's completely besmirching his father's legacy that he built there with the Chargers. It started with him moving the team, like you mentioned, when, just a complete FU to the fans, to move to a city that didn't even want him. And like you mentioned, the Rams actually own that stadium that they're in. And, he just keeps on, besmirching the Chargers name. And this is a classic franchise. This is a franchise that goes all the way back to the AFL. This is a team that in something like 1961 won the championship in their league. This isn't some.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned no, because that's one thing as a Chargers fan that I always remember to bring up is we did win an AFL championship, and nonetheless we blew out the New England Patriots, which I believe were the Boston Patriots at that time, but we blew them out in that championship game.
Yeah, exactly. So, this isn't some expansion team that came in 20 or 30 years ago. This is a, prestigious old school franchise. And I think, they're loyal fans like you. I think, you guys deserve way better than this crap they're giving you right now.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, I shake my head at it, Noah. It sucks, but it's not going to make me not be a fan of the Chargers. But I could go on all night long about that. But there's two guys that I want to talk about a little bit tonight, give some shout outs to before we do it, go ahead and get off here. The first, and before I throw this up here, Noah, do you happen to know who is the current sack leader for this NFL season?
Aaron Donald.
That is correct. This guy right here, Aaron Donald, like we said, blew up the Patriots last night with that defense. He is the current sack leader in the NFL, half a sack above TJ Watt, who by no means is having a bad season. And he's put together now 2 really, really good seasons. But I got to give a huge shout out to Aaron Donald, who just continues being one of the best defenders in the NFL, dominating offensive lines and being a sack machine as a defensive tackle and not even a defensive end. Just a huge contributor to what's been a very, very good Rams defense this season.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about him before. This guy, what can you say about the guy that hasn't been said? He's just like a freaking steamroller, or a tank just mowing through your offensive line, double teams, triple teams, it doesn't matter. And like you mentioned, sure, they put him on the edge sometimes, but this is a guy that primarily is a defensive tackle. He's coming up the middle. And, your Sinners and Garths, they just have no chance. Dude's a freaking monster. Had a sack and a half last night against the Patriots. Like we mentioned, the sack leader, TJ Watt's having a great season. But I saw a quote earlier today, and I can't remember who it's from, but I think it kind of summarized my opinions on Aaron Donald. It said something like, this is a guy that every season he plays is the defensive player of the year. There's other guys that are deserving, but if you're talking about the best defensive player in the league, it's Aaron Donald, and it's not even close. And I've got to agree, because the stuff that this guy does at the defensive tackle position, no less, is just phenomenal. I really feel for those poor interior defensive linemen that have to attempt to block the guy, because, he's just a freaking beast. What else can you say?
Yeah, and one thing that I could add to what you just touched on, Noah, is I saw earlier today, and granted it isn't the end-all be-all by any means, but Pro Football Focus had posted that, over the past 3 seasons, this is the lowest graded season by Aaron Donald. And even with it being his lowest graded season in the last 3 years, he still is the highest graded overall defensive player in the NFL. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
Literally having not career low, but your lowest low of the past 3 seasons, and you're still beating everybody else.
Yeah, I saw this stat as well. Now you mentioned it, and that that just displays it. I think this guy's the best defender in the NFL when he's having a season that in Pro Football Focus. Sure, it's not the end all be all, but I think sometimes it does show trends. Maybe it's not. Oh yeah, this shows everything that you ever need to know. But I think sometimes it does display trends, and the fact that has Aaron Donald as number one there, it does show me that sometimes it is right. And the fact that it's lower than the past two seasons combined, he's still number one. I mean, best defender in the league in my opinion. Dude is just incredible.
Yeah, most definitely. And the other guy that I want to touch on, and I know that some of our viewers here, both Mike and David, will be, you know, overjoyous and really excited for me to talk about this guy here. Let's go ahead and throw him up. Aaron Rodgers. I know this guy gets a ton of flack. There's a lot of people who are not fans of him whatsoever. And don't get me wrong, I'm never going to be one of those guys, that's saying, "Oh, Aaron Rodgers, goat this, goat that." That's not me. But I will say, he's absolutely phenomenal. Right now, he's sitting at 5 yards short of 4,000 passing yards, 36 touchdowns to only 4 interceptions, with a QBR of 118.5. And me and Noah, we've mentioned this before. Back in 2011, he finished the season with a 122.5 QBR, which is the record, and he's just short of that this season. So, hate him, love him, I don't care. You got to admit that this guy is, lighting it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny that you mentioned Mike and David there. I'm kind of in that same category. Do I like Aaron Rodgers? I think he's kind of a dickhead, but you got to give credit where it's due. The guy, and you listed stats out there, he's just been phenomenal this season. And he's phenomenal every season. Now, my question is, can he finally take the Packers to another Super Bowl? That remains to be seen. We've mentioned the fact that he's had a lot of games in his career in the postseason where the team falls down and they can never get back in it. And sometimes those games get ugly, like that San Fran game last year. But, this season so far, what can you say? Like you mentioned, he's been absolutely incredible, easily in the MVP race. He might even be the front runner because, the media does love Aaron Rodgers. And, the media is the reason a lot of, they portray him as the GOAT. So if it's down to the media to pick the MVP, I honestly think they'd pick Aaron Rodgers over anybody else because A, he's had a fantastic season, and B, the media just loves him. So, but yeah, he's had a fantastic season. The Packers, do I think they're as good as their record shows? Maybe not. I think that their defense has been a bit suspect for a few years, but yeah, he's just been great. So,
And you did mention the MVP race there, Noah. And, I know a popular pick for most of the season as far as the MVP race is Russell Wilson, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to knock Russell Wilson. Huge fan. Always been a huge fan of Russell. And sadly, he's never won an MVP, which is shocking. But just for comparison's sake here, Russell Wilson is at just shy of 3,500 yards. So just over 500 yards less than Aaron Rodgers, 32 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. So Russell Wilson, for many people, is one of the guys in the MVP race. Granted, he's not the only guy in the MVP race, but as of right now, because Russell Wilson has cooled down a little bit and the turnovers have gone up for him in the past 2 weeks, Aaron Rodgers, stats-wise, is a considerable amount ahead of him right now. So that definitely adds to, what you were saying there with Aaron Rodgers being the front runner at the moment.
yeah, and Russell Wilson, he's still having a fantastic season. Don't get me wrong, but like you mentioned, I think he has thrown a few, too many interceptions for his liking lately. And 12 right now, sure, it's probably not a lot by most quarterback standard, but for a guy like Russell Wilson, has one of the highest passer ratings ever, has one of the lowest interception ratings ever. He's thrown a few more than I would expect from him lately. And Aaron, speaking of throwing so few interceptions, this is a guy that just doesn't throw them at all. I know he has the career NFL record for lowest interception percent. He doesn't force the ball. He throws it away if there's nothing there. He's very good at making decisions. And, I know there's a lot of memes about captain throwaway or whatever because I know he led the season in throwaways a few years ago. But you got to like that he doesn't, take those risks. And he can still obviously make lots of big plays. So, Yeah, I would probably say he is the front runner right now. It's going to be a fantastic race because, like you mentioned, guys like Russell Wilson, um, Josh Allen, maybe even a guy like Aaron Donald will get in the mix, like we mentioned there. But I would say he probably is the front runner.
Yeah, and I actually now have a really good friend who is a lifelong Packers fan. He kind of fell in love with them with Brett Favre's earlier days, and now to this day still a really big Packers fan and a big Aaron Rodgers guy. He actually sent me a post earlier. I have it pulled up on my phone here. This is a pretty great stat that Aaron Rodgers has become the seventh quarterback ever to throw for 400 passing touchdowns, and he hasn't even hit 90 interceptions yet. So, like you said, there's a lot of memes with captain throwaways, but that interception to touchdown ratio is, he just doesn't turn the ball over very often. And that's one thing that you definitely want out of your quarterback.
Yeah, he has 2 seasons with more than 10 interceptions, and those 2 seasons were both within the first 3 years of starting. So since then, the highest interceptions he's had in a season was 8. 8 interceptions a season. Some quarterbacks do that in half a season. Some do it in an entire season. But the fact that since 2011, that's the highest it's ever done, and typically he's around 4 or 5, maybe. Just incredible.
Yeah, and I think that this offense is really coming together. Last season they were a playoff caliber team. Aaron Rodgers has already just about tied his yardage and surpassed his touchdowns by 10 touchdowns. Do I think this is a team that's going to go out and win a Super Bowl? I don't know. We're gonna have to see. I feel like the offense is really clicking. I don't know about the defense. They have some big playmakers on that side of the ball, like Zadarius Smith. But overall, I don't really know how I feel about that team. But definitely Aaron Rodgers is going to keep him in it. As far as how he's playing right now, he'll keep him in it. Should he slow down? Who knows? But yeah, I think I said all I need to say about that guy. Great season by him so far. Unless there's anything that you really want to touch on, Noah. Fortunately, I do have to wake up really early tomorrow morning. But if there's something you want to talk about, go ahead.
Uh, hmm, Nothing's coming to mind except the fact that you and I might have a very interesting project coming up lately, and David's still in here. We're not going to give any major details away, but let's just say that thanks to this platform that the Sports Box has so generously given us, this might not be the only show that we do. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah, most definitely, Noah. One thing to add to that, I don't want to, give anything away there. But me and Noah, as always, we enjoy doing the show together. But one thing that we have been trying to do is we want to try and get some of you guys on the show. Even if it's only for a couple minutes here and there. Whether it be Dave or Mike or we just want to get other people here on the show, get your guys' opinions. Having different faces here and there probably definitely adds to excitement for the viewers. So, feel free to shoot me or Noah a message at any time, if it's anything that you're interested in, and we'll try and figure out, getting you guys on here.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to have some guests on here. It's going to be very interesting. It's very fun with the two of us, but obviously, interacting with the fans is what's the best part of it, in my opinion. And getting someone else on as a guest, I think would just make it even better. So I definitely look forward to that. But like I mentioned, the little secret project. I know David was excited about it there. We'll stay tuned for that. We'll keep you guys updated with that. But yeah, I mean, we just keep getting better every week. The fans are loving it. We obviously love it. We're going to keep expanding, hopefully continue building this thing, and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, most definitely. Almost went a whole 2 hours tonight, Noah. I had a really good time. Thank all of you guys for joining, and more importantly, not only just viewing us but contributing to the show, commenting. We love having you guys here. Thank you for joining me, Noah.
Yeah, absolutely loved it, man. Thanks for having me as always, and like you mentioned, the fans, they're the real MVPs here.
All right, guys. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Make sure to get some college and NFL football and whatever, sports you guys might enjoy. Make sure to catch it this weekend. Everybody stay safe out there. We'll be right back here again next Friday night, 9 p.m. sharp. All right, guys. See you later.
Thank you for watching the Sports Box. Follow us on Facebook at Sports Box Show, Twitter at Sports Box Show, Instagram at The Sports Box Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 points. See you next time.